Hello and welcome! In this lecture we're going to use our walls and doors and various other objects to create a really nice map. Alright, so here we already have all of the obstacles logic working. Here with these walls placed on the map, we can test our pathfinding. So by default it starts on 0, 0. So if I place the mouse over here on this corner and if I press the key, yep, there you go, it does calculate the path. So it goes through there, avoids this wall, avoids this one, and gets to the destination. Okay, so all of it works, and with this we can build a nice level. We just need to place around some more walls, so let's do that. Also, by the way, these assets, they have a shader which is really nice, and it automatically stretches to occupy the object size. So you don't need to pretty much duplicate each object if you want to make something big. You can just use one object and just scale it and scale it as much as you want, and it always looks good. So with this, let's place some walls. So let's start off just from this one. And also over here, the canvas is clickable. That's very annoying. So let's use this button on the hierarchy in order to make it untouchable. So now if I click, yep, I can click through the canvas. Okay, great. So like I said, let's put some walls on the map. Now you don't have to make it exactly like mine. You can build whatever map you want. And also for doing level design, you can enable snapping to make it a bit easier. For snapping over here on scene view, if you go into the top left corner, you see these buttons. And this one with the magnet, this one enables snapping. Now in order for this button to be clickable, you need to make sure that over here you are in global. If you set it to local, then this one is unclickable, you cannot use it. So you need to change this one into global, and now you can indeed click it. So with this now, if you move using the handles, it automatically snaps. And for the snap settings, next to the magnet, you've got a little arrow, and if you click on it, you can modify these. However, in our case, using a grid size of 1 works perfectly. The actual cells are 2 units, but using 1 is more than good enough. And next up to the right of that button, you also see some more snapping options. These are the increments, so these are the ones that are applied if you hold down control. So if I move without touching anything, then it's moving 1 by 1 unit. However, if I hold down control and now I move, now it's moving by that amount, which by default is 0.25, which is perfect for our use case. Also, one important thing is make sure you're only moving them around the XZ axis. We really don't want them to move on the Y. Okay, so with that, let's just place some more walls. First of all, we can just position them roughly, and then we can use snapping to make it perfect. So first of all, I'm going to add some walls pretty much around the map. So our grid starts off on 0, 0. So we can place some walls here, stretch it all the way in there. Then let's duplicate this wall, go into the rotate tool. And on the rotate tool here, you can also use the increment snapping. So if you hold down control, as you rotate, yep, it rotates by various things. So you can rotate by a perfect amount. Except the original one wasn't perfect, so here let's manually put this on Y of 0, and for the other one let's manually put it on minus 90. Okay, so with this let's continue building our map. So we've got this one, then let's say over here on this side we've got another wall, then perhaps somewhere around here let's duplicate this one, put another one, something like this, rotate it, put it around here, and for this one let's leave a sort of gap here. So put it like this, little gap, then a bit more, okay. Then let's say we want another one over here on this side. So put this one. Again, make sure you only move on the XZ, not the XY. Put it in there, then maybe something else in here. Then for this one, maybe stretch it a bit more, get a nice, interesting shape. Okay, so I think this is an interesting shape for this map. Let's just stretch out the floor as well so it occupies the whole thing. Okay, so this is a nice shape. Now here I left these two gaps. And for these, let's use another object. So let's go back into our polygon prototype asset. And over here inside the simple, so we've been using the walls. But over here we also got a bunch of doors. So let's use this one, the wall door double 3x3. Let's drag this one. There it is, that's what it looks like. So first up, let's scale it to fit the other objects. So let's put it maybe with a scale of 2, 1, 10. So let's see, okay, that looks about right. Let's position it where we want. So let's say the gap is actually meant to go from there to there. So yep, these two positions should be walkable. Let's just stretch this out a bit more. Okay, so exactly like this. However, here with the door, we need to be very careful because this by default has a collider. If we leave it with a collider, and if we also place it on the obstacles layer, if so, then these two positions, these two won't be unwalkable. That is not what we want. We want the player to be able to walk through this. So that's very simple. Let's just go into the collider and remove this component. Remember how what matters is the colliders, not the visual. So you can still have this visual with a nice door archway. Just make sure you disable the colliders so these positions are walkable. Now that we have the door double set up, let's make it into a proper prefab. So let's go drag it in there, make an original prefab, name this the wall door, and also rename the one here. So wall door. Okay, so we have this one. Let's also duplicate it for this other door here. Just rotate it and put it around here. Okay, so here's the very rough map. For some more objects, actually over here we've got a whole bunch more that we can use. Like for example, let's drag here this column. This is pretty interesting. Let's make it just a bit thicker. So on the scale, maybe 2.5, 1, and 2.5. Okay, so just a nice pillar like that. And for this one, we do want it to block. So let's change the layer into obstacles and leave it with a mesh collider. And just make this into a prefab. So go into the prefabs, make an original one, and call it just the column. And also in here, rename this to column. All right, so that's it. Now we can place this around anywhere. Alright, so this is the level that I want. Now that we have the rough map, let's actually position these objects perfectly. We really just need to make sure that the colliders are all positioned correctly. So for example, over here, this wall, this is not placed correctly. When the pathfinding script automatically goes through each grid position, it's going to do a raycast, and it's going to do a raycast on this point, and then also another one on this point. So in this case, this point does not have a collider, so this grid position would be walkable, even though there's supposed to be a wall here. So let's make sure to position this correctly. So for the wall, let's hold down Control, put it right down the middle. Yep, there you go, exactly like that. So let's make sure we do this on all of them. Also, in quick tip, like I mentioned, you can use the background as a guide. However, when the background is in shadow, it's kind of hard to see the dashes. So here in Scene View, on the top right corner, you can go into the button in order to disable lighting. So if you do this, yep, now the grid is much easier to see. So with this, it's now much easier to position all the objects correctly. So let's do that. Alright, so here it is, our really nice level. All of the objects are positioned perfectly, so everything should be working. Now we can re-enable the lighting in order to see it. And also let's organize this since our hierarchy is filled with tons of objects. So let's create a brand new empty game object. Call this the level parts. Then let's reset the transform, make sure it's on 0, 0, 0. And then let's just select all of the object parts. So select them all, make them a child of this object. And all of these as well, make them all child of this object. Okay, so with this, just a nice organizational thing. So here we have all of the parts inside this game object. Okay, great. Now with this, let's test and see if all of it works. But actually, before we do, in order to be able to see which ones are walkable and unwalkable, let's actually change something. So on the prefabs, let's open up the pathfinding grid debug object. And over here, we have all our values for the pathfinding. Okay, that works great. Now inside, we can just add a new to the object. Let's just add a basic square sprite. Let's rotate it to face upward, so rotate 90 on the X. And let's put it maybe just a little dash, just something like this. Then for the name on this object, let's call it isWalkable. Then let's save the prefab and let's go inside this pathfinding grid debug object script. And over here we have our update node. Let's set another field, so a serialized field. Let's make it private of type sprite renderer. Let's call it the isWalkable sprite renderer. Then here in the editor, let's drag that reference, okay? And back in the code, super simple. Just on our update, let's set this one and set the color. And we're going to set the color based on the path node.isWalkable. So if it is walkable, then let's set the color to color dot, let's say green, and if not, color dot red. Also, by the way, if you're not familiar with this syntax here, this is basically an inline if. So if it is walkable, then we're going to use this value. And the colon here means else. So if it is not walkable, then we're going to do this. Okay, so with this, let's test. And yep, here it is. Except we forgot about the issue with the height, so we need to raise it up by a bit. And actually with this like this, we cannot see if that one is walkable or unwalkable. So back in this prefab, let's actually go into this one and raise it up by a little bit. So let's say 0.1. And since we're using this just for now, just for testing, let's actually put a 2 on the scale and a 0 on the Z, and on the Y scale also a 2. Okay, so this is now going to be hiding the text objects, but it should be enough to see which positions are walkable and unwalkable. So let's test. And if there it is, now we do see it. So all these positions are walkable and these are unwalkable. Okay, that's great. However, here we also see that our grid is too small, so these positions have no grid position. So we need to increase the size of our grid in order to make up for the whole map. So let's do that. For that, we go into our level grid script. So here's where we have the scale. And then for the width, let's say 20, and for the height, let's say 30. Okay, let's see. And if there it is, and now it does occupy the whole thing. So all of these and all of them are correct. So all these with wall, they're all in red, and all the other ones, they are in green. Okay, great. And we can also verify that the pathfinding still works. So by default for our testing, we're starting over there on 0, 0. So if I put the mouse around here, then the pathfinding should go through here, under this door arch, through that one, and should stop in there. So if I put the mouse and I press on T, yep, there you go, there it is, the path going from there, through here, here, and so on. Okay, great. So now let's just clean up. So let's go into the pathfinding grid debug object. And over here, let's just disable this game object so we can see the numbers again. Except right now, we also don't want the numbers. So let's get out of this one. And let's go into our pathfinding script. And over here, we're creating the grid system and then debug objects. And now we no longer need this, so let's just comment. And if there it is, so here we now see the whole map and everything works perfectly. Okay, great. So here we built an entire map using all of our level parts. All of the pathfinding works perfectly. So now the next thing that we need is to make sure that the unit follows the path instead of going directly. So let's do that in the next lecture.